Why didn't the Levite want to stay in Jerusalem, and where did they go after that? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 19, verses 11 to 21. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Judges 19, verse 11. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges 19, beginning at verse 11. They were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, "Come, please, and let's turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners, who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah." So he said to his servant, "Come, let us draw near to one of these places, and spend the night in Gibeah or in Ramah." And they passed by and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in and to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. Just then an old man came in from his work in the field at evening, who was also from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" So he said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, now I am going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house, although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself, for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant. There is no lack of anything." And the old man said, "Peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the open square." So he brought him into his house and gave fodder to the donkeys, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. In our last lesson, we discussed a Levite in the mountains of Ephraim who had a concubine that abandoned him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem of Judah. After 4 months, the Levite decided to go and try to reconcile with his wife, and he succeeded, for she agreed to return home with him. They began their journey at the end of the last lesson and have now come near Jebus, which we would know better as Jerusalem. At this time in Israel's history, the nation of Israel didn't control Jebus. The Jebusites did, hence its name. This place is the story before the time of King David, who would take control of Jerusalem. And from chapter 20, we'll find out that the story takes place soon after the time of Joshua. Because this was a city of foreigners who were not of the children of Israel, the Levite didn't want to spend the night here, in spite of his servant's advice. Instead, he wanted to travel further, either to Gibeah, not to be confused with Gibeon, or to Ramah, both within the tribal territory of Benjamin. Gibeah is about 5 kilometers or 3 miles north of Jebus, with Ramah being another 3 kilometers or 2 miles further than that, and so if one was walking at a brisk pace, Gibeah could be reached in just over an hour. And sure enough, when they arrived at Gibeah, the sun was setting, and so this is the place where they decided to stay the night. But there was a problem. Nobody would take them in. Now the law of Moses had taught Israel in Deuteronomy 10:19 that they were to love the strangers that came among them and be hospitable to them. But this wasn't the case here, for even though the Levite and those traveling with him had all of the other provisions that they needed, so as not to be a burden on their host, nobody would take them in. Instead, they were going to be forced to stay in the town square, which would be the open space in the city where the homeless would have had to stay. This lack of hospitality shows that the character of the people in the town of Gibeah was degrading, something that will become painfully evident in our next lesson. Before they settled in for the evening, however, an old man came in from the fields where he worked and passed by the Levite. Having someone staying in the town square looked strange to him, so he asked where he was going and where he was coming from, to which the Levite said that he was a Levite and going home to the mountains in Ephraim. When you know it, this old man, he was from the mountains of Ephraim too, and told the Levite that he would be welcome to stay at his house for the evening. And what's more, even though he had provisions, he would not need to use them that night. He could save them for the rest of his journey, for the old man would take care of his needs. This shows us that even in a town where sin is accepted and the people aren't acting righteously, that there could be people that don't behave this way. This old man was hospitable, even if his brethren were not. Sadly, however, this isn't the end of the story, for even though the Levite and those with him would have a place to stay that night, something absolutely horrific would happen later that evening that would change the course of Israelite history moving forward. We'll discuss what that is, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 19, verses 22 to 30, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.